Welcome to another episode of Todd's Two Cents. Today's episode is titled AI, Cyber Reality, and Winning Smarter in GovCon. In this conversation, we will explore how AI is reshaping the GovCon landscape, why traditional cybersecurity thinking is falling apart, and how contractors can move from reactive compliance to proactive advantage. I'm your host, Tom Wilson, and joining us today is Tony Maida, a technologist and cybersecurity innovator known for challenging assumptions, and he's also slightly challenging too, and building what others say cannot be done. Tony brings a deep expertise in AI, data security, and GovCon tooling, and he'll share how AI expands the attack surface and why data level protection matters more than perimeter defense and how smarter contractors can use technology, metrics, and policy foresights to compete more effectively. Tony, welcome to the show and say hello to our intellectual listeners and tell them a little bit about yourself and your company and your history here in GovCon.
Thank you, Ton, and hello, intellectual listeners. A little bit about myself. I've come from a long history of system engineering. I've been around the block quite literally. Started out in FAA radars with Next Gen right after 9/11, and then moved into the next new thing. Went into wireless networking, stood up the first one for the Army at Fort Indiantown Gap. Did service oriented architecture before they decided to make it easier and just call it services. Did
Mhm.
control system engineering for nuclear subs and loved defense and stuck in it and went into complex IT infrastructure with Army Corps of Engineers. And that's when I discovered I was a solution architect and did that at CSRA, GDIT, and then became a solution director at BAE Systems before deciding I can do this on my own. I went out and
Yeah.
started Modular Misfits. Um, and I love the intro. Going back to that, I just like to say that I don't break those assumptions for sport. I break them because they're already broken, and pretending otherwise is actually expensive. Your AI absolutely expands your attack surface, not because it's evil or magical or it's got AI fairy dust, but because it operationalizes bad data faster and at scale. Most orgs
Yeah.
are protecting networks like castles while their data moves freely, gets copied, cached, transformed, trusted without question. So all they're doing is they're making their problems worse and uh, basically exponential. That mismatch is where breaches, poison models, and their bad decisions are born.
Yeah.
Um,
So I guess I can see how and where the modular misfits, you know, name of your company comes from. I love it. I'm a huge alliteration branding freak, and so I love the whole imagery of your company's name.
oh yeah, it was born after attending an Army 10 and
Hmm.
hearing its unicorns ask a question. I was like, their name is so cool, it's memorable. I gotta have one.
Right?
So, Department of Defense, Department of War, whichever flavor you like, has asked for modularity, and they want everything to be modular. All right, cool. And I've always been told that I'm a misfit, so the name was a marriage made in heaven.
It's perfect. It describes you so well. Um, and you know, speaking of which, I think I love how we met. We met through, John Ferry's group, and there's been so many interesting conversations. And I can't keep up with all of it, and I'm not smart enough to understand even like a tenth of it. But I think, from my interactions with you, you're one of those people who can talk AI, cyber, strategy, tooling, like literally all at the same time. Usually people can only talk about, one of those topics. So let me kind of start there. If you were dropped into like a typical mid-sized GovCon company, and a lot of those companies are our intellectual listeners, if you were like to work with them tomorrow with like no title, no authority, what's the first thing that you would kind of quietly fix? And I know that you're not a quiet person, so like, work with me here, that most leadership teams don't even realize is broken.
Well, usually my first 30 days at any one of those companies is quiet as I figure things out. So I do quiet reconnaissance. The first thing I do is I figure out who's who in the zoo. Who is the person everybody goes to? Who's that person whose opinions drive what decisions are made, so that I'm able to make them my friend because I know I'm going to need an ally to change things. And then I'll take a look at their processes. If their processes are haphazard and they seem to be last minute, just getting things done right in time and with no real accountability or ownership, or they've got the wrong junior person in a position that that person is struggling to do. Those are kind of the easy buttons where I can make some changes. Something as easy as what's your top of funnel decision making process? Who owns it? A lot of these mid-sized companies, they just go after everything that somebody says is a good idea, and you don't have
Yeah.
it resources, and that's one of the biggest problems I've been seeing so far. And also have,
Shiny objects, you know what I mean? Like it's so they're so distracted all the time.
or think how many times in the GC in the chat that we have um, people bring up, oh, take a look at this on sam.gov or look at this. The businesses that are doing it wrong take all those links and go after every single one of them without a true strategy.
Hmm.
So defining a strategy is always my starting point, but figuring out how to do so without ruffling a lot of feathers at upper management or senior management levels is the right way of going about it because you see it all the time. They're pursuing it, but they can't really put it into campaigns or what
Hmm.
their differentiator. Why are they actually going after this? If they can't answer those questions, there's a huge problem there. And also the wrong
Yeah, no,
people
I
in the
totally
wrong
agree.
position.
And that's the Yeah, and that's um the whole underlying theme of our podcast is being strategic, right? And really focusing and understanding what does it take, what does it mean, instead of being so reactive and focusing on the tactics. I think being busy, being seen as being busy, and having this forward motion or the illusion of forward motion is really kind of doing everyone a disjustice and is really not successful in the end. So let's just dive straight into our conversation here, which is in our first segment, navigating the AI-driven threat landscape in GovCon. And so, Tony, from your perspective, how is this rapid adoption of AI kind of changing the threat landscape in GovCon? And what does it mean for how contractors should be thinking about security today?
So a lot of people think that AI is a magic easy button, and it's not. It doesn't simplify the threat landscape. It actually compresses time and hides your failure.
Mm.
What you're seeing is we used to take months of human error, misconfiguration, basically failing and learning to until you succeed, is now happening in minutes because the models are happily consuming whatever you feed them, and they produce output with a straight face. And sometimes you know it's absolute bullshit. In GovCon, that means that you have to ignore poison sets that are being moved from an IT problem to a mission and contract risk almost instantly. That attack surface is no longer just the network points. It's every data hop, transformation, and assumption baked into the pipeline. One of the things that you touched upon in the intro is that perimeter-based security just basically breaks down because AI ignores boundaries. The data crosses the cloud, it crosses partners, crosses enclaves and classifications, and we still act surprised with a Pikachu face when controls fall apart once that packet leaves the fence line. So your firewalls don't understand intent or provenance or trust decay, which is why you have Vaultus being touted as something important because it doesn't wait for you to notice that something went subtly wrong that is now exponentially amplified because the security model inherently trusts and assumes trusted interior, and that's not the right way to operate it.
Yeah, no, I think so much of what you're saying really resonates with me, and I wonder, is it my kids used to ask, is this a good, is he evil or is he good, right? And so I guess as far as like the threat and the exposure of threat quicker and faster, is that a good or a bad thing? I think I kind of know the answer to that, but I kind of want to hear it in your perspective as to like what you think with the rapid pace and the speed of being able to identify these threats faster, and is it effective so that we can address them, or is it exposing something that has always kind of been there before, but because we didn't have the technology to find this quicker, now we're actually seeing potentially, the challenges that maybe before this technology we didn't have it.
All right. You gave me a lot to answer there. Let's see if we can unwrap.
I know, sorry.
So is
It's
it
just how my mind thinks, right? It's like,
so let's start with the is it good or bad? AI is as good as the person who built it and what the intent was of that model. Some are large language models, which we're used to. Some are
mhm,
small models that do the jobs that we don't want to do. So it all depends upon the model. But in AI, as it stands today, is not inherently bad. Now you take off the guardrails. Now we're talking that there's going to be something along the same levels of what you see in Terminator movies, for lack
yeah,
of a analogy, is that that's why the guardrails are there, and responsible AI and trusted AI are buzzwords you hear. The other side is has the problem always been there? And yes, perimeter-based security has always said, let's put up better fences, and we can protect the data by keeping people out. But people are getting better at getting in,
yeah,
so AI is actually making that problem faster. It's discovering exploits, discovering zero-day vulnerabilities that were took months and years to discover in the past. Now AI is allowing them to find ways in. So that way, the real shift that they have to understand to make AI good, trusted, responsible is that you're not looking at it from protecting your boundaries. It's time to protect the inside of the house too. And protecting that data means that you got to embed your policy, your identity, and integrity checks at the data level, not at the network level. It doesn't need to be another policy server that does the job. It needs to
mhm,
be data having that policy ride with it, telling any system that it goes onto, here's who's able to access me. Here's what my operational sorry, my operational parameters are, and what needs to happen to control and to safeguard me. That
yeah,
way, you're able to say, all right, that data does not have the same trust as all the other data. And now I start to reduce the blast radius that AI is already expanding. And that way, you treat your data as a static asset instead of a living contested resource is the biggest mistake they're making today. Because data has its own supply chain. It is a contested resource, and it is what's going to win or lose the next war.
yeah. And data has legs too. You know what I mean? Like before, it was kind of like you said, protecting it, keeping it safe, keeping it isolated. And now we're oversharing. The data is kind of getting out there, so it's really kind of important to be able to kind of control and monitor, or at least know what kind of data is kind of bleeding and crawling um, out of wherever the source is. So um, that really kind of brings me to, I think, our next discussion, which is the proactive policy influencing CMMC. Like, again, I wish I had an episode where I wasn't talking about pivoting AI and cybersecurity and CMMC. Like it's kind of monopolized our conversation. But I know that, a lot of people, and you've taken a very proactive approach in cybersecurity policy, especially around CMMC. So how can GovCon companies kind of move from reacting to compliance requirements, which for those who do DOW work, it's something that you actually have to have now. It's a prerequisite, to do work at DOW. How is that kind of shaping capabilities and influencing where those frameworks are kind of heading?
So many of the companies today just react to policies that they may be given warning about, like CMMC. They had 2 years of warning on, but they treated it like the weather report. They complain about it, build umbrellas at the last minute, and act shocked every time it rains again. The companies that actually win treat policy as an early signal of where the government
Yeah,
has a problem. CMMC is not about the checklist or auditors. However, it is about making these PEO, not PEOs,
the
uh,
PAOs now.
PAOs. I'm sorry, PAOs. rich because it's a wild west of pricing, anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 to get assessed. So that's where it creates a lot of unrest in our industry. Is now they look at it as a money making grifting scheme rather than
Yeah.
mission, your perimeter trust, your paper SSPs, and your annual attestations failed under real adversary pressure. So for these companies to move from reactive proactive, you got to really stop asking, what do I need to pass? And start asking, what capability does the government actually want to exist? Get ahead of them. When you design your real controls that measurably reduce risk, you end up ahead of the framework, not chasing it. If you can find areas where there's a gap the government closed causes a real security risk, now you can go and talk to NIST and tell them, look at what I found, look at what I did, and drive changes to the framework itself. And that way, your compliance becomes a byproduct of your processes that you're already implementing at the corporate level and not just a goal. And that you need to understand that it starts with having a secure software development framework in house so that your influence comes from showing up with evidence of what you've done in house, not your opinion. Because what matters to the government to change policy and to change the actual compliance documentation, they're looking at metrics, they're looking for prototypes, they're looking for operational data that helps them shape that guidance far more than white papers full of promises or PowerPoint presentations that talk about the realm of the possible. Bring them something concrete, bring them something real, and you can start to shape what the future of cybersecurity looks like.
Yeah, I feel like this journey with CMMC has been so long, so drawn out. It's like a soap opera. And I think with any type of change, there's always going to be a few things, right? There's going to be those skeptics, those detractors, those who are going to grift. We see it all the time with the GovCon grifters, which is one of my favorite hashtags to use. I hate the fact that I have the hashtag GovCon grifters and that I use it and it's common and it's a joke, but it's like no joke. It's some serious change here that impacts the companies, and I don't think that anybody will disagree that CMMC and cybersecurity is not expensive. But I kind of feel like it's almost the cost of doing business, right? Like there's a reason for it. I don't think anybody can argue the benefits or the importance of it. I think it's always in the execution and the requirements and the compliance aspect of it. And I think you're right. It's one of those let's turn lemons into lemonade type of thing, right? Let's stay ahead of where the government is moving towards, and where your customer is moving towards, and focus more on the capabilities. I think that's the missing discussion a lot of times. When we talk about this.
Well, yeah, they're treated. It goes back to when I said they treat it like a checklist. It's not a checklist. It's basically, here's my minimum expectation for what it takes to secure this system, but I'm still catching up to reality. And we're looking at some expert judgment into turning assumption into engineering, going beyond what you think into what you know. How do you really prove that your system is secure? And that's where you have to go beyond the checkbox. You have to prove your capabilities are there. And it's not just, oh, here's the cost of doing business because I have to get the CMMC merit badge, just like a Boy Scout. Doing business with the government is beyond that. It's, do you care about your nation enough to ensure that you're not basically executing compliance theater? Because if you, the moment you look at it as the cost of doing business and it's just another checkbox, is the minute that data can be compromised later down the road
Yeah.
because corners are cut. People don't give it the right type of importance that it commands, and that's a scary thought. Yeah, as a small business coming into play in this last year and being faced with CMMC compliance charges, good Lord, I'm so happy that companies like ATX Defense exist, where you can do it as a service and get an enclave for 5 of your employees and you don't have to throw in 80 or 90,000 just to get started. So there's ways of doing it, and to ensure compliance becomes a part of your business is another thing that, yeah, it does cost money, but it's not just the cost of doing business, it's the cost of protecting your nation.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with ATX. Can you tell me a little bit more about them and how they operate and what the value and benefit would be for the smaller GovCons?
Yeah, I met Zach in Austin at South by Southwest last year. It was
Yeah.
really interested in his model. He has a as a service model that's set up in Google where he does five seats minimum, but it ends up costing you 17,000 per year that could be paid monthly. That is the lowest cost of CMMC compliance that I've ever seen. He also has he can do set you up in your own enclave that you've got in Microsoft to do, and that cost is about 27,000. And then he contracts with other PAOs to do the compliance assessment because he can't self-assess, and it's another 10,000 because they know that it only takes 15 minutes because of the document preparation he does. So he's really trying to make it affordable to small businesses and show them that there are options out there, and he'll
Uh-huh.
work with you on the price and the payment options. There's nobody like Zach out there right now.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. It was the first time I've heard of that, and I think that that is definitely um, helps to kind of alleviate some of the financial burdens and even the um, not everybody is fully equipped or aware or has the time, the patience, to get up to speed on a lot of these things. Because being a small business owner, you've got to be many things and do many things, and you can't know and be everywhere. So it's a force multiplier for small businesses. Um, I had one other question about this, and it's like for the life of me, I've lost it. And trust me, it was good. It was a really really good question, but maybe oh, I know what it was. Um, right now CMMC is only required for DOW work, and I kind of want your take on this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's not required for Fed Civ work. But there's still a lot of sensitive data and information and infrastructure on the Fed Civ side. If you were to read the tea leaves, how far behind is FedCiv? Will they ever see the light of day in FedCiv? And do you think maybe it should? Because I personally think it should be across the entire GovCon, um, you know, industry in general. But that's just me, right? But what are your thoughts on that?
All right, I'm gonna go full misfit here. So
I love it.
I'm
It was a
looking at
setup. It was a
I'm
setup.
looking at Department of War, and I'm looking at Fed Civ. When's the last time you heard about the FAA having a data breach? Never. When's the last time you heard about the Department of War having a data breach? Three times in the past year, and they try to keep it really quiet.
Yeah,
So that should answer the question as to which one might be better. I think that the FedRAMP standard is really robust. It actually justifies why each control is being selected rather than giving the contractor the carte blanche to select controls that an authorizing official signs off on. And it's not consistent, whereas the Fed Civ side is consistent.
yeah,
If we can get the same consistency applied across the board in not compliance theater in the Department of War, and that CMMC is actually taken seriously, then I think that you would have something there. The other one that nobody talks about is the NSA. They stood up a secure software framework that talks about how do you actually harden your IDE and how do you ensure that your binaries and executables are safe, that you're not introducing a vulnerability because you downloaded a package off of GitHub that had something in there that was packaged in as a love note from China. So it's there's a lot that I've seen inside large companies and inside small companies that make you cringe at how cybersecurity is being done. But then when you look at FedCiv, because they have safety critical and human lives are on the matter, they take the cybersecurity way more seriously than any place
Interesting.
before. You kind of flipped it on its head. That's why I said going
Yeah.
a bit here. It's not the answer you were expecting.
No, but I love it. You are a misfit. I love it. Um, so moving to our next segment here, I hesitated putting this conversation about innovative tools and open source advantages because I love this topic. And it is one of those topics that can monopolize an entire conversation and derail it. So I'm a little concerned about where we might be going on this. So I'm intellectuals, put on your seatbelts because you don't quite know where we're going to go. But you spend a lot of time building tools instead of just critiquing existing ones. And God love you. Like I can't even imagine doing what you do. But what role do custom tooling and open source approaches play in creating like a real competitive advantage in GovCon?
God, just think about how much money you spend on tools every month.
I don't
And do
want to
you
think about it. Thank you.
and do you really need all that shit? You don't. There's
Yes,
so
she
okay.
who dies with all the tools wins, right?
No, he who uses the tools as effectively and as cheaply as possible wins. So
Okay.
so here's the way that I approached it when I started on the company, and I looked at yeah, like for these G2X type platforms for doing business development, top of funnel identification. 5,000 per person per year. It's like, come on, guys. My blood is not blue, and I'm not VC backed. Or even think about Microsoft. Anybody who does software development thinks that VS Code is the best one out. Well, when you know the open source game, you find VS Codium is Microsoft's VS Code without the telemetry that they steal about your usage. So why use the one you got to pay $200 a year for? And they get all your usage data. They know what you're doing. You're feeding the system instead of downloading the open source version and having more control of your IDE and keeping it secure, even having options for standing up your own server locally. It's just it puzzles me sometimes that people think that you have to pay for something for it to be good, and you don't. You just have to be a little creative in the way you do things. And it's the same that when you mentioned my platform Buddy, I built my own proposal team. Buddy was my BD AI. So when I first did it, I said, all right, sounds like Forrest Gump saying Gen A, Bud A. So that's how Buddy came to be. Um, I wanted to put it out there and charge people, but then when I found out the hosting cost of actually standing up my own SaaS, it's like, okay, maybe after I get funded. But it does do so much more than what's out there today. It identifies top of funnel. It cross references with the JBook. It cross references with prior awards. It gives me a heads up by looking at awards that were made in, let's say, 2021 that are coming up for recompete, identifying where there's an avenue that my capabilities might fit with a prime, and also generates scripts and emails for code outreach in case I wanted to do that. It just tries to make my job so much easier. Other ones that I built, these are custom models I built using Vertex AI, Google's AI workspace, and I can talk about that one afterwards. But building custom models, I have Nagy, my proposal manager, because all they do is they nag.
Naggy. Hey, I resemble that remark.
I
You need to give her a better name, okay? Like,
oh no, Nagy. I have Cliffy because I'm not going to use Clippy, but Cliffy is my tech writer, and he comes up like a little.
I'm thinking Cliff Clavin from like Cheers.
I should have done that. And then I made myself. Basically have had the model watching me do machine learning as I write proposals and do solutioning. So I have a solution architect model that I'm still refining because it's not as easy. Having inference and correlation in the way that a human thinks about solutioning, creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
AI can't do that. That's the key thing that AI can't do that we can do. AI can recreate from something that already exists. It can't give you a new solution. Using it to do that or to try to come up with a whole custom platform and do vibe coding over a weekend to make your own open source product isn't the same with what I'm talking about here. It's like if you really know what you're doing, you can pull these open source packages, stitch them together, and have a nice framework that saves you thousands per month.
So, but so here's the thing though. The operative word is if you know what you're doing. And I think that's the reason why a lot of these subscriptions and a lot of these tools and solutions that you kind of buy are so much easier. It's like I'm a cook. Let's use this analogy, right? Like I am a cook. I am from the Martha Stewart school of cooking. The more complicated the recipe, the more obscure ingredients, the better. And I will like tackle that instead of like a Rachel Ray 5 ingredient type of recipe, right? Um, but I still will truly enjoy a nice stop at McDonald's because it is done for me. I don't have to think about it. And if I'm really lazy, I'll DoorDash something. So you've got like these 3 levels of, abilities, still serving the same need, which is I'm hungry, I want something, like to eat. Not everybody can do this though. Like, so that I think that's kind of, like I'm super jealous that you can do this because I would love to kind of try.
So maybe I should start my own podcast and teach people how to do it. Maybe
Maybe
you
you should.
would.
It might be cathartic, you know what I mean? Like you could, yes, I highly advocate that. So you intellectuals, you heard it here. Modular Misfits podcast coming to you in 2026. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm definitely going to do it. So the other thing I try to do, if anybody follows me on LinkedIn, I publish a lot of what I build.
yeah.
I published How Do You Build Buddy. I didn't keep it a secret. There are some things that are more complex that I didn't publish yet. But if somebody just comes up and says, "Hey, how did you do that?" I truly believe in open source and teaching. So if I built something on an open source product, I will teach you exactly how I did it. And part of it is what I post on LinkedIn. I am so much I want to do. Like I want to make a blog that has all these up there so the person can come to my website and see it. It's just you want to do everything, you just don't have the time to do anything.
Yeah. I know. And I think that's the greatest thing about this industry is that it's ever evolving, and with all this technology that we have with AI and all of these, great ways of being able to kind of bring our thoughts and the different platforms to kind of share this. I think it's a great time to be in business. It's a great time to be sharing, like all of these different types of solutions and problems to solve. So and that's the whole reason why you and I never sleep. So,
So
a little insights into Ton and Tony here. You can see us at 2 a.m. if you'd like, because we'll be up.
answering each other's emails, which is
I
awesome.
know. That's crazy. So here's another topic that I feel like I talk about at nauseum all the time. Pivot, CMMC, 8A,
Yeah.
strategy, but strategic pipeline development and metrics. Um, it's almost kind of like the new 4 letter word, I think, in this industry. But you're a little outspoken. I'm a bit outspoken about some traditional metrics and models. I despise win rates. I know that there are several other people who have posted recently about win rates and different things like that. I don't even answer win rate questions anymore. When I get asked. But from your perspective, like, what do you think leaders should actually be measuring to understand whether you have a healthy pipeline, a capture strategy, and that everything's kind of effective? Because leaders, executives, the C suites, they want to be able to like measure something, And I think the traditional way of measuring success has kind of like turned itself on its head. So, what say you?
Yeah, I know I made the same mistake of asking you a win rate once, so
You did. You're never
uh,
going to do it again, are you?
no, never going to do it again. But it's something that's ingrained in you from these large companies. I mean,
Yeah.
EDIT, it was basically you can make an altar of the win rates and go and pray to it every day. The way that they basically flaunted it around. And when I first started out as a solution architect, I was a solution architect advisor, and my win rate was, I think I won one in my first year, and it was for headquarter Air Force. And they would ding you for it the next year. Finally, I learned the trick. It's not about the win rate, it's about your strategic thinking. You
Mhm.
understand the customer. Do you get what they're really asking for? Can you read between the lines and decipher them without a Rosetta Stone? So after I figured that out, yeah, the win rate was 82% amongst my peers, but that didn't really measure what I was capable of. It was, do you understand how to think and can you actually pursue it the right way? But there's no measurement, there's no metric to that because win rate is there. It feels comforting because it's simple, but it lies by omission. Because you can have a great win rate by chasing small, low risk work that never moves the company forward, or a
Mhm.
terrible win rate of while
Mhm.
the hard work being that you're breaking into a new account and displacing incumbents because your win rate is one a year because you've unseated an incumbent. So there's complexity there. It
Yeah.
tells you nothing about your strategic positioning, what your capital efficiency is, or whether you're building momentum. Leaders fixate on it because it fits nicely in the quarterly slide. So I have been changing this. How do you measure strategy? It's did you even if you lost, you should be getting some feedback from the customer. Did they give you feedback that says this shit will never work? Then you
Mhm.
know you're not you're not understanding their requirements correctly. Are you missing the point on what requirements they're even asking? Did you miss something you were instructed on? Get all that straight. So, looking at strategic is how many innovative solutions have we developed in house that year in order to go after similar requirements? That's one measure that I do because then that tells me I can actually build something. The second one is how many new wins did I have for a particular customer that I didn't have? And did that win unseat an incumbent or was it a greenfield? Making it a little bit more complex, making the numbers harder to count, tell us where we're actually being effective, where we're not being effective,
Yeah.
and you're able to recreate things. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I think to your point, there's so many extenuating factors that go into success. And I think, people try to equate win rates to success. And success looks differently depending upon what you're trying to achieve. What's your goal? What's your mission? Um, and so there are a lot of companies and that are innovative, that are breaking into new technologies, that are maybe breaking into a new customer. Your win rate's going to possibly look horrible for a while, but that doesn't mean that there weren't measurable outcomes and successes that you had along the way. And so I think from my perspective, measuring success and measuring the health and some of the metrics has to be very industry specific, technology specific, and maybe customer specific too. Because an organization who is breaking into something that's innovative, that's never been done before, it is going to have a very different win rate than if you are doing a butts and seats help desk type of, like bid, right? It's like there's nothing, innovatively challenging, or it comes down to pricing. It's the race to the bottom, like type of bid. But the environment is changing. And so the sophistication and the type of support that the government customer is needing is very different now too. And so it's almost kind of like you got to break some of these, break some dishes here before you can set a new table, because the table and the people at the table are have changed, and it's very different.
Oh yeah, and that's why you have to invest in relationships because it they're trying to figure it out. Everything's
Yeah.
changing fast. Like uh, recently, the shift from net centric to data centric, but still focusing on the wrong things, only saying the word, but not really bringing the technology it needs to do it. But if you had a relationship with the end customer, which I had when I was at BAE Systems, I was always in Aberdeen talking to PELC3N, showing them what they were doing wrong with the reference architecture, explaining to them what data centric really meant,
Hmm.
and not expecting anything out of it. I was basically called upon, hey, Tony, we're looking at this with Booz Allen. Would you like to come up here and join us for a meeting tomorrow for 2 hours? I'd go do it. My VPs would get pissed because I didn't have something tied to it that was a pursuit. But here I am building a relationship. The good news is that relationship survived me leaving BAE Systems. I'm still able to call them up and have a conversation with them. And it's been something that goes beyond is how do you what's your win rate? It's what is your true success rate? What is your like if I were looking at one of the ones that I did is like a basic calculation is what's your expected value of pursuit?
Hmm.
Like taking your total contract value, multiplying it by another bullshit term of probability to win, and subtracting it of your cost of pursuit minus risk adjustment. That gives you kind of like what is the real value? What is the profitable value of a pursuit, and is it truly worth it? But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
So
everybody, what is your P win? I don't fucking know.
I love it. I love it. So I think this is what you need to do. I think you need to come up with like, I think what you're describing is almost like a GovCon BD earn value management um, system, right? Or like solution equation. Like, what is your earn value management equation for GovCon win? So I'm gonna expect that that equation. Let's work through that. Enter your BSP win with your work share. Factor in your
Do
relationship.
you know the
So
customer? Have you bought them dinner?
yeah, yeah.
Have you
Here's
taken them for drinks? They
here's
increased it by
your
one
new
percent each.
weighted contract value. Yeah, exactly. Uh, so I think this is such a great segue into our last segment here, which is the human side of winning, and we've already kind of broached the subject here a little bit, because I think beyond technology, beyond the policy, beyond like what's in these reports, there's human factors, like that are behind all of this. And so, what human factors do you see as being the most critical to success in GovCon? Especially when our industry becomes more technology, AI, focused, and it just becomes really, technically kind of complex.
Oh yeah, and it's a loaded answer in three different parts.
Yeah,
But the main one is patience. You can't be in GovCon if you're impatient because it rewards endurance more than brilliance,
yeah.
and it doesn't change that. So your deals still take years, trust compounds slowly, and your most teams fail because they lack not because they lack talent, but because they got tired or distracted halfway through the campaign. They think, "Oh, I'll have it in 3 months." No, you won't. Maybe nine, maybe 12, maybe 18. But
ADHD, man, ADHD.
it is. It's basically a marathon because you have to have
Hmm.
sustained effort because there's no immediate payoff in GovCon. That's a quiet separator nobody wants to talk about. Fancy tech doesn't save you if you can't stay in the fight long enough for it to matter. The second part is deep technical expertise. People think that because they're brilliant, they're going to win. No, it only
Hmm.
wins if someone can actually use the thing under pressure. Because the fastest way to kill the good idea is to make it elegant but unusable, especially for operators and program staff already living in tool fatigue. They think, oh, I need a better user interface. No, you don't. You just need something that anticipates what your mouse clicks are and is built to the persona, not decoration. And the third part, that everybody's failing is that everybody designs shit in a silo and without really collaborating with the government and technical exchanges. So your collaboration is always going to beat hero culture because your GovCon is a
Yeah.
team sport. It's got institutional memory. Lone geniuses will burn out or become single points of failure, and neither scales, which has me scared shitless right now building my company. But that's another conversation. The builders are the ones who ship, they instrument, they iterate, they accept feedback from reality, even when it's uncomfortable, because they're the ones who understand it's a long game. The talkers are the ones who just are like the elegant bullshit that comes out sounding right in meetings. They have the perfect PowerPoint and they sell
Always
something.
have like always have the response, always got the answers, you know. And that's the thing that I appreciate so much, and I think, well, I know our customers really appreciate about me is I have no problems with being in a meeting and be like, I have no idea. Or like that's a problem or a challenge that I have yet to encounter. I don't know what the solution is. They're like, well, what's the best way to do that? So I was like, it really all depends, right? It depends on so many different things. That for me to give you some BS answer right now that you would expect from a consultant is really kind of not like my MO. So yeah, that whole playing hero ball, it exists on the lacrosse field and it exists in the boardroom too. Which I really really hate, and those
It,
get exposed really fast.
and I mean, you think about why do they have to do that in a vacuum? Why can't they just open it up? And being comfortable with uncomfortable silence was one of the things one of my mentors taught me. He says, open your mouth, say a statement, then shut it and wait for the customer to talk. It might take a minute because they're waiting for you to talk. They're not used to just jumping in. But
Yeah.
getting them to jump in and break that ice and wait for them to say something usually leads the conversation in the right way. You want them talking more. The human element is them. It's what are they going to do? What do they need it for? Why are they even asking for it? Understanding their needs and their usability. Now you're going to deliver what they need so that you are really encompassing the human side of winning.
Yeah, there's so much value and so much that you can learn in that uncomfortable silence. Or even, I think some people call it like the pregnant pause. And so, you know, I think maybe it comes with age, experience, being able to kind of read the room a little bit. The more you interface with people at different ranks, different levels, different, like from different perspectives, the really great leaders are ones who understand how to just kind of throw something out there and wait for the response. But we're very impatient. We don't like to, like we don't. People think that the pause and the silence is, oh, something is bad, or they're thinking, like they're thinking bad things, and it's not necessarily that at all. You need to give people time to digest and think about what you said, because if it's important, this is something that I've learned in my public speaking class, is that if you have something that's important to say, you say it and you take a beat. And sometimes that beat has to be like 3 5 very long seconds, but it's in that beat that shows the person who is hearing what you have to say that this is important. It is so important. I'm going to let you sit with that for a minute, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do that with our customers. We're so wrapped, especially BD people, into demonstrating and explaining and over explaining how important we are and how great we are and how we can meet this need, when you didn't even give your customer a chance to say 2 words.
God, I hated that back padding.
Hmm.
I think I gave the BD guy, oh, it was capture manager. I gave the capture manager a heart attack at DISA one time. We were rolling in the first SDN in the Pentagon, and DISA was involved with the planning. And Lieutenant General Skinner said, "I don't like this design. Why are we going with this instead of Cisco? I want all Cisco in here." And I got up and I said, "You're a fucking idiot, and here's why."
Oh
You could
shit! You told
drop.
Skinner he was an idiot. No,
Yeah,
you're
yes, and I got my design to go into the Pentagon because sometimes it's saying what they don't want to hear. And if that means calling them an idiot to tell them that their design or the Cisco whispering in their ear is not the right way to go,
Yeah,
sometimes you have to have the backbone to do it. And to this day, I can call up Lieutenant General Skinner and give him a suggestion, and he'll listen to it because it succeeded.
yeah.
But it was a risk that I took. Not many people will take it.
Well, intellectuals, this is a life learning lesson. Let's have this be a coaching moment. Is that approach may not work for everybody, but yeah, I get it. Like you, I think sometimes you and I can get away with saying shit that other people can't because it's in our nature. It's we know how to say it diplomatically without it being spiteful or hurtful or like whatever. But yeah, I think there are times sometimes where delivering the uncomfortable truth about something really is important, and that's the reason I think sometimes clients like to work with me, is that I'm always going to give them the unadulterated, unfiltered response or recommendation, because they know it's coming from a good place. They know it's because I want them to be successful, or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. But again, I don't recommend that approach for everybody. Please don't call General Skinner an idiot. But you know, Tony can get away with shit like that. Um, but anyways, this let's wrap up our call here today with a few takeaways. I think we were kind of all over the board on our discussion, but some of the things that I took from our conversation is AI doesn't simplify security. I think it kind of amplifies and magnifies existing weaknesses faster, which was probably always there, but we weren't able to kind of, process that so quickly. That data level protection matters more than just kind of perimeter defense, which is super important. I learned a ton about open sources and tools, and the fact that I am not uh, mentally, physically, professionally equipped to do that. But hey, if you can do it, or follow Tony, he'll teach you how to do it. He'll give you the whole recipe for it. So that's also great. And then we talked about our win rate, which is something that's a little, it's a little thorny in my side and pipelines. So again, there was a lot that we unpacked here. Tony, what are some of your last parting thoughts and words that you want to kind of share with our intellectuals here today before we close out?
So one of the things I'd like to add is that nothing that we talked about works if you treat it like a transformation initiative instead of a discipline. Security, AI, capture, tooling. They're not projects you just finish. They're muscles that you either keep training or that you lose. Excuse me. The companies that win, they build the feedback loops, not slide decks. They value the voice of the user, the voice of the customer, and they listen to reality, even when
Mhm.
it contradicts your leadership narratives. The most failures, they come from confusing intent with execution and effort with progress. And I would also emphasize that advantage compounds quietly. Small, correct decisions made consistently beat big, flashy bets made occasionally. If you engineer trust into your data and your decisions and your teams, everything else accelerates. Miss that, and you can have the best tech out there and still lose to someone who simply operates better over time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've totally enjoyed this conversation here. And I think the thing that I appreciate the most from a conversation is that we didn't just talk about these topics in theory. Like, we literally talked about them from a very strategic, real world scenario. And for our intellectuals listening, I think the takeaway is really kind of simple. The landscape is changing, so whether you're ready or not, the AI and the technology is expanding some of our threat surface. Compliance is not a strategy, and metrics without the context, I talk about context, it's going to be a t-shirt, context, is literally just noise. And I think the teams that win are the ones that are really willing to kind of think differently, to challenge some of these assumptions, and do the hard work like really early. So Tony, thanks for your perspective here today and to keep pushing the boundaries. And to our listeners, if this episode made you a little uncomfortable, that's usually a good sign. But take a beat and look at how you're securing your data and how you're measuring success and how you're actually using the technology for good in your business. Thanks again to our intellectuals for listening here today. Remember, you have to think big to win big, be an intellectual. And until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of possibilities.